back in the garage again. And in a slightly unfortunate chain of events, I somewhat knew this was happening. I knew buying the Spec V, it did not have 6th gear. I was hoping it was going to be an easy fix, but it's not. So in an unfortunate chain of events, I'm about to be the only guy on YouTube with not only a B13, not only a B14 G20, no. So in an unfortunate chain of events, I'm about to be the only guy with a 32 series, a 70 series, and a 51 series transmission rebuild. So what I'm realizing I'm going to do, because this is basically going to require the same tool list as from the 70A video, or the 70V video rather, I may just include that same clip of the parts list. I'll go over that. Or if I don't end up doing that, sorry for being lazy, but just go ahead and check out the video on the 70V, and I have the parts list like right in the beginning, or the tool list I should say, right in the beginning of that video. So here we have the RS6F51H transmission. This one is actually from a Maxima. This one down here is actually from a Sentra. So what I accidentally did was drive like 2 hours away to buy this transmission and didn't really look at it very hard. I didn't see some tall tale signs that it was a VQ transmission. I don't know how I missed it. But yeah, so this here is out of an 02 Maxima, and I'm gonna be using it to replace my 6th gear. Like I said, I thought this was listed as being a Nissan Sentra Spec V transmission. I asked the guy what year it was out of. He said it was out of an 06. You know what I mean? Didn't really think about diving too much into it other than that. Initial looks, has the same shift tower, you know what I mean? Like this side, it all looks the same. Goes into all 7 gears, actually, 6 gears in reverse. So I didn't really notice it. I haven't had a QR very long. I'm not really very well versed in the QR stuff. And I missed the bell housing thing. I noticed that it didn't have the speed sensor, but I thought that was also on like the later Sentras. I didn't think that was only the Maxima thing. I knew that it was like Maximas didn't use the speed sensor or whatever from looking at previous write-ups on basically exactly what I'm doing, using Maxima gears in a Spec V Trans or vice versa or whatever. There's a write-up that got posted, I believe like 3 years ago on that. Go ahead, if you search this, you'll end up finding it. It definitely helps. But yeah, so I didn't notice it was Maxima Trans. Got here today, a couple days later, tore my trans out, rolled these two next to each other, and realized the bell housings are not the same at all. So you can see here's the top of the bell housing. We got 2 bolts close together, a little hump, and another bolt. Whereas on the bell housing for the QR, there's 2 bolts far apart, and then another little guy over there. So, yeah. As you can see, I already have this transmission torn apart. Diving into the 6 feet a little bit here. Getting ready to kind of finish pulling the last couple shift forks here, last couple roll pins and stuff like that out. Very similar to the 70 series. If anyone has done that, you will have no issues going through this transmission. Make sure you have the factory service manual as usual, just in case. But yeah, so this transmission, basically same issue as what happened to, I was gonna pan over, but the B13 isn't in here right now because I'm driving it. But yeah, basically same thing that happened to the B13, and it's one of the synchros here. So this is the 5th and 6th synchro, I believe. You see it'll go down over that gear, but it does not go up. You can pry on it, do whatever you want to do. It only wants to go one way there. So I'm pretty sure that is my issue. If you guys have seen my 70V teardown rebuild video, This is pretty similar to that. If you've done one of those already, this will be basically a walk in the park. First thing, I'm gonna highly recommend, go ahead and pull up the factory service manual for this. If you type in like B15 factory service manual, a link should pop up from the NICO forums, NICO forums, and they have a bunch of factory service manuals listed for all of our Nissan, not only Sentras, Maximas, anything Nissan related, anything Infiniti related. They basically have all of the service manuals up. So go ahead, track that down, pull that up. And essentially, you won't really need me in this whole video if you have that, but you know, what the hey, I'm going to do it anyways. Work on getting the shifter assembly removed. So to do that, I guess before that, pull out your two neutral position switch and your reverse light switch. Then you're gonna wanna pull out these are two, like, I forget what the factory service manual calls them, but it locks your shift mechanism down in place there. This, I think I used like a 1-inch wrench. It's a pretty big size. And this was just a regular 14. So go ahead, get all 4 of those removed. So once you have those 4 things removed, go ahead and take out, there is 4 10 mils. Hold down the shifter assembly. This one you have to slide it into a gear to get the bolt out. Those aside, kick it back in neutral. And I kind of just use the motion of going back and forth in neutral to pop it out. Go ahead now, set this aside. Now this will be my first look inside this transmission. So once you have shifter assembly out, there's going to be 4 more little bolts you have to take out. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the end of those, or once you take them out rather, they're gonna have a spring and a little ball bearing. Keep those in order. They're all a little bit different, and one of them, I believe it is this one. I believe, yeah, it's this one. This is the one that has all those in there, like little by little. So right off the bat, there'll only be the 1 spring, ball bearing, and I believe like one of the little shift rods there, or not shift rod, but retaining rod. But again, take those out, but just be careful. Keep those in order. You're also gonna need this little magnet here. After you have shift tower removed and the 4 bolts with the springs and check pins and ball bearings all removed and set aside safely, then go ahead, remove all of the case bolts around the outside of the case, and go ahead and remove, I forgot what they call this stupid little plug in the factory service manual, but go ahead and remove that little guy too. I just popped a flathead and that little embossment that they make, and you could pry it up that way. So remove the case bolts and that little plug, and we'll get to the next step. So, quick thing to note, I don't know why it doesn't state anything in the factory service manual that this matters or anything like that, but see how this gold zinc, or whatever that is, see how this, not dark, see how there's some sealant on the bottom there, and see how there's not, okay, nothing on that one. Got goop on this one. So it's only these 2 bolts. Same thing on the Spec V case. It's only these 2 bolts, but for whatever reason, they're different. Keep track of those ones, put them back in the same spot. I don't know. That's what I'm doing. Once you have all the case bolts removed out of the outside, and this little plug removed from the top here, this is where it gets a little tricky, I guess. You have to simultaneously open up that C-clip right there and pry the case off at the same time. What I went ahead and did is I cracked the case loose all the way around, like with a screwdriver, put it in here and kind of just like tapped on it till it came loose. So that way the seal is broken all the way around the outside. And then it's fairly easy to go ahead, open up that C-clip and just continue prying off with a screwdriver at the same time. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. You have the case split. It looks something like that. I got a little ahead of myself. The next step after that, after you split the case, is to remove the reverse gear selector and shift fork or whatever, which is these little guys over here. It's two 12 mil bolts. You can pop that bracket off and then pop out the arm and shift fork from there. And then the next step after that, what's the next step after that? Next step after that is going to be to remove those set of roll pins and remove that shift fork and rod assembly. Take your little magnet, dive into the rabbit hole. There'll be 2 ball bearings in there. Set those aside. Again, keeping track. And then there it is. So you might have to wiggle the shift rod to get this to attach. But then roll pins here, and there's going to be a C-clip here and underneath. You'll have to get those removed. 5th and 6th shift fork, shift rod, selector have all been removed. Now we have the 3rd and 4th shift rod, selector, and fork. You will have to remove the roll pins from the selector, 2 roll pins there, and then there'll be another C-clip on the top and bottom of the shift fork. Pop those out, and then that assembly can be removed. Okay, so I messed up and said there wasn't a roll pin when I was taking out, I believe, the 5th and 6th gear shaft. There is a roll pin, and there's 2 ball bearings, and then another roll pin in the 3rd and 4th shaft, and then a long thing. Basically, you could see the orientation there. Just keep track of it. Like I said, don't pay attention to me all the time. Sometimes I mess up, you know what I mean? Just keep track of that. Be careful. Okay, final step, getting the gear stacks out here. One last little roll pin to remove here on the 1st, 2nd shift selector fork. Don't have to remove the one in this guy here. Just remove that roll pin, and then you can pull up this rod enough to pull the fork out, and then you're all set. All right, I'm done. Maxima final drive, or should I say just the Maxima ring gear swapped over onto my Spec V helical diff. There's the open diff from the Maxima, swapped over the ring gear. Got the Maxima gear stacks in here. This is my bell housing, the QR, and I am good to go. All right, got it buttoned back up. I now have all 6 gears. There it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty sweet. So, I'm gonna go eat lunch. RTV dry. Crank this back together. New clutch too.